A school district of the future prepares lifelong learners to demonstrate mastery of 21st century competencies that will equip them for continuous success.
DeKalb County School District is a leader in K-12 and early childhood education and has developed a comprehensive master plan to ensure school improvements are made throughout the DCSD community.
Students can reach their fullest potential and excel when schools are well maintained and capital resources are up to date.
Whether it's state-of-the-art learning spaces, our 7 robotic programs, renovated and innovative schools, or technology devices for every child,
these resources and investments not only benefit the DCSD community, but also the taxpayers of DeKalb County.
A top priority for DCSD is supporting social and emotional skills of young learners and their families, and our Early Learning Center addresses the readiness gap.
Every 5 years, we assess DCSD schools and facilities, technology equipment, and examine construction to address overcrowding and to accommodate growth so that DCSD scholars can thrive. To achieve and excel, we provide technology at your fingertips with anytime, anywhere access, infrastructure enhancements, business system integration, and instructional tools to support top-of-the-line connectivity and cybersecurity, and a family impact hub that meets diverse families where they are.
So, how do we pay for these general improvements to impact student achievement and positively affect the DCSD community?
E-SPLOST is a 1-penny sales tax that allows school districts to fund their capital improvements. The voters of DeKalb County will be asked to extend the 1-penny sales tax for another 5 years. This education special purpose local option sales tax is critical to building our children's future and equipping our community for success.
Alrighty, so we're going to go ahead and get started. It is now about 6:06, and I'm calling the February 2022 meeting to order. I think we're going to have to start taking off this welcome visitors, but I'd like to welcome all our visitors. And I'm sure we have a plethora of visitors. So we're going to move right on to item number 2, review and approval of the February 23rd, 2022 meeting agenda. The meeting agenda has been distributed, and it's actually before you now being shown. Are there any changes to
Kathy,
the meeting agenda? Yes.
Yeah, we had talked about adding Hans and to give us an update on the CMP and other items.
Yep, give me a second.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Let's add that under new business. Under, I'm sorry, looking at the wrong agenda.
Excuse me, Kathy, would you prefer I stop sharing my screen?
No, you can continue sharing. I just want to make the changes on my copy.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Mel. Yeah, we're going to add that under new business under C for C.
Okay.
And that's going to be the CMP plan and projects for E-SPLOST 6. And that will be DeKalb County DCSD.
Right.
Okay. Any other updates or changes to the meeting agenda? All right, so hearing none, can we by unanimous consent agree that the February 23rd, 2022 meeting agenda as corrected or updated is good, if there are no objections. All right, so hearing none, the meeting agenda is now approved. Review and approval of the meeting minutes from November 17th, 2021. Are there any corrections to the meeting minutes from November 17th, 2021 as distributed? All right, so hearing no corrections, can we by unanimous consent again agree that the meeting minutes from November 17th, 2021 are approved as distributed if there are no objections? All right, hearing none, the meeting minutes are now approved. Moving right along to the discussion follow-up matters from prior meetings. A report on the E-SPLOST items presented at the January and February 2022 BOE meeting.
All right, so there were 2 items total, one for December and one for January. The December item was an E-SPLOST 5 project for design build services for the renovations at the Green Forest Drive facility to Winter Construction Company for $4,906,500. The second item was presented at the February meeting. There were none presented in January, no E-SPLOST items. And that is for GC services for Freedom Middle School Security Vestibule to Diversified Construction of Georgia for a not to exceed amount of $352,136. And those were the only 2 SPLOST items that we had. I can roll directly into 5A, Kathy, because those are the only 2 items on the contract award list that we had. Again, in December, we had the design build services for the Green Forest facility. There were 11 attendees. 1 proposal was received for design build services. When we took this to the board, there was also a budget reallocation for this particular project. We increased the budget for the general contractor from $2 million to $5 million, and the contract was $4,906,500. And then in February, we had the GC services for the Freedom Middle School. We had 5 contractors at the pre-proposal conference, and we received 3 bids for that. It was awarded to Diversified Construction. That had a original budget for the general contractor of $250,000. We added $250,000 to that with the budget reallocation from program, and that had a pending contract amount of $352,136. And the remainder, so you can see the budget went up to $500,000. That particular project, the only $250,000 that was in there was just in the contractor cost code. So when we added the $250, we'll also be putting money into IT, into construction services for any testing that's needed, and then into a project contingency in case there are any surprises that come up. And that concludes what we had for design, or for the December and February awards, contract awards. And that covers both 4A and 5.
Okay, any questions?
Hey, Richard, so we can award it with only 1 bid, or I guess the school board's procurement policy?
Yeah, because it did go out for open bidding, and there were 11 people that came to, or that not came to, but attended the virtual meeting, and only 1 firm chose to send in a bid. That could, you know, there are various reasons why that happens. It does happen occasionally. There are various reasons. Either, you know, a lot of the companies are you know, really busy. Maybe the project, now this one's not too small. This was a good sized project. Maybe it's too complicated for them, or, you know, maybe they don't like the schedule, or they couldn't get subs, or, you know, there's a varying reasons why that happens. But yes,
Okay, thank you.
sure.
Okay, thanks, Derek. Any other questions? All right, so move right along to 6, review of the community feedback collected from the E-SPLOST committee email address. Daniel?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Looks like one item of note involves the CMP and Druid Hills High School. There was concern about the timing of the scheduling of presentation or the item. Let's see. Looks like there was a question about last month's MSR.
Okay, you want to forward that to Richard?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions? Any questions? All right, so moving right along to 7, the MSR review.
Thank you, Kathy. I'll make sure I'm sharing the correct screen. I've got a few different things going on here. Let's. Hopefully you can see the cover page for the MSR.
Yes, thank you.
Good, thank you. I'll dive right into the executive summary in the interest of time. Major achievements for the month. Of course, we're happy to report that the project construction budgets are in good shape, and that shows up on MSR tables 8, 9, and 10A through 10H. One project was advertised for builder services. That's the athletic fence installation for high schools. 2 contracts were fully executed in January for builder services. The first was Security Vestibule Group B for the 7 schools listed: DeKalb Early College Academy, Elizabeth Andrews High School, Briar Lake, Chestnut, Oak Grove, and Vanderlyn Elementaries, and Henderson Middle School by Diversified Construction. The second was baseball facility improvements at Druid Hills Middle School and Redan High School by Gilbane Building Company. We're happy to report that the Indian Creek Elementary School Phase 2 earthwork and underground utilities went substantially complete at the former Indian Creek Elementary site. So that project is pretty well buttoned up construction-wise. In terms of status of our major construction projects, the Cedar Grove Auditorium addition is approximately 70% complete. Ashford Park Elementary roof replacement, 10% complete. The DeKalb Alternative East Campus roof replacement, approximately 55% complete. The Oak Grove Elementary roof replacement at 10% complete. And the Winbrook ES roof replacement was 90% complete at the end of January. For turf and track replacement group B, Ronald McNair High School is about 20% complete, and work at Towers was 15% complete. We had to suspend work because we discovered large amounts of rock in the field once we uncovered some dirt, and we've got a request into district leadership to get approval for a change order to commence that rock removal and resume construction. I believe we've got the change order document in the preparation stage. We did get the proposal from the contractor, so we're reviewing that and packaging that for approval.
Hey, Mel, before you go on, real quick question in regards to the Towers High School and the blocks.
Yes, ma'am.
Just a little concern, did we not know that the rocks were there, or?
For the turf and track projects, we weren't going to the expense of geotechnical investigation. Typically, those turf fields were grass fields were already in locations where there had not been any rock discovered. So yes, in the field area at Towers, that was a new discovery once the topsoil had been removed.
Okay,
On-
so just
On larger
another,
projects, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Mel, I don't mean to interrupt you. Well, maybe I do, I don't know. Just a real quick question about, anything on that's near Stone Mountain. The concern is that there would be rock because of Stone Mountain. Do we not take that into consideration when we're doing
Correct.
projects,
Correct. We
such as
typically
this
do.
one?
Correct, we typically do. The turf and track projects are operating on fairly lean budgets. Any normal construction project for a building, we do a geotechnical investigation typically to make sure we uncover those potentials. So you're absolutely correct.
Okay, thank you for that information.
You're welcome. New delays to projects this period are more strategic than surprise. At Chamblee High School, our turf installation project staging, that is to say, the contractor's laydown area, construction entrance, and the space they need to actually perform the project would conflict with location of paths of travel near portable classrooms. So in agreement with the principal and the region, that project has been rescheduled for the summertime. Similarly, at Lakeside High School for the turf and track installation there, our access to the field would be directly in front of a bank of portables, which obviously would endanger student safety. So again, in consultation with the principal in the region, we've agreed to reschedule that project for summer.
Okay, quick question. Sorry,
Yes,
Mel.
ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
And I think this may be for Richard. Just a little concern. Why do we still have portables at these schools?
Portables are at the schools because of capacity issues.
But okay, correct me if I'm wrong, and I may be, because I thought Lakeside just had a new addition, and same thing with Chamblee. Chamblee's a new school.
No, those additions were part of the projects, the major addition projects that were deferred, so that we could do the CMP, the Comprehensive Master Plan.
Okay, all right. Thank you.
No requests or claims, we'd call them, by district contractors or builders this period. No change orders were officially approved by the board this period or period of January. And our current project count shows 12 of the 62 projects complete, 15 in construction, 28 in the pipeline to start construction. And of these roughly 45 projects, 22 approximately are scheduled to complete here in calendar 2022. So we hope to make pretty good progress this calendar year. If you don't mind, I'll take the opportunity to share a few of the photos, some of the progress that we reported. This is the DeKalb Alternative East Campus roof replacement. It's a very large building. You may remember it as a former corner kind of local shopping center. It's almost 200,000 square feet with wall separations between sections of the building. We call them parapet walls, so it's a little bit complicated, but progressing nicely. Demolition of the old roof at Oak Grove Elementary, and materials delivered on site mid-January, staged and ready for installation. Roof replacement at Winbrook, essentially complete by now. And we were happy to show this picture indicating that our construction contractors were taking roof safety very seriously. I would like to take the opportunity, Kathy, if you don't mind, to thank everybody who participated in developing the Dorville United Elementary School. We had the ribbon cutting for that facility on last Thursday, February 17th. I would dare say it was a great success. I wanted to share a couple photos of that event as well. You can see all of our board members, lest Dr. Morley, she was unable to attend. They seemed pretty pleased and impressed. That's good. That's our beautiful new media center. Thanks for putting that in there. And we also rededicated the Doraville Bell. If you hadn't heard that story, the original Doraville School was founded back in 1866, and it was an important part of the history of the Doraville and the Linwood Park communities. Throughout its time in operation, the Doraville School served as an essential cornerstone in the community, particularly the African-American community and of color. The Doraville School closed in 1964, and the bell was dedicated to the city of Doraville in 1973. In concert with the mayor and city council of Doraville, it was agreed to have the bell loaned to the elementary school, to Dews, and we hope the bell will continue in that tradition as a beacon of hope and a center of the community. And to symbolize and demonstrate that connection to the past, we placed it in a very accessible and visible location right in front of the main entrance of Dews, Doraville United Elementary School. We love to call it Dews. And we believe that this location and loan of the bell to Dews in the district will provide our young scholars with a daily reminder of the importance of community and hopefully inspire many of them to reach their lofty goals. So we're very pleased to have facilitated that particular investment. That concludes my formal remarks. I'm happy to take questions or additional questions.
Are there any questions for Mel and what he presented?
Okay, thank you, Kathy. Thanks,
All right,
everybody.
thanks, Mel. And I just wanted to say accolades to Mel and his team. I think you're doing an outstanding job, so thank you so much. All right, moving right along to new business, facilities maintenance program.
All right, I'm going to go through a brief update. So of this, and this was just this past week, completed 54 of the open work orders from when SSE left. There are only 277 of those open, if you recall. Well, that's actually the next sentence. As of today, the 23rd, we've completed 3,607 of the 3,884 corrective work orders that were open when SSE left on September 27th. There's still 277 that are open, and of those, 141 are from nutrition, and our facility staff will be working with nutrition mechanics to assist closing out those work orders. We had 43 new work orders this past week, so that brings a total of all work orders closed out this week to 97. So it's 54 of the old SSE work orders and 43 of the new ones. As of today, there were 1,754 new work orders that have been initiated since SSE left. And of those, there are 542 of those that are remaining open. So of the 1,754, we've closed 1,212 of those. Let's see. So we had some boilers and spot coolers, or boilers repaired and spot coolers picked up at both Montclair and Huntley Hills. We've also installed a new intercom at Rock Chapel and provided a loaner intercom at Southwest DeKalb until that school gets a new intercom. And that's one thing that we are looking at is replacing or doing an overlay of a new type of intercom system at the school. So that's one of our major facilities projects that we're working on. We're also looking at doing some re-roofs and some HVAC replacements as part of our CARES funding and facilities projects. I don't have the exact numbers with me for the number of new hires that we have, but that's one thing that we're looking at also is hiring some new maintenance staff and creating a shop for a shop to focus on HVAC. And that's where we are now with that update. We're going to move on to, or were there any questions?
Yeah, Richard, just one,
Yeah.
well, one question from me. What are the type of work orders that you're seeing?
Very interesting that you asked that. The next page was a breakdown. We actually have a breakdown of what the remaining SSC work orders are and the new work orders. So for the new work orders, I'll go through those. We have 21 audiovisual, and these are just listed by trade. So I'm not sure what they are because there's 92 carpentry, which could be anything from putting in shelves or repairing something. We have 42 electrical work orders, 1 equipment repair, 11 flooring, 6 glazing, 46 grounds, 92 HVAC, 27 locksmiths, 11 for kitchen equipment, 10 painting, playgrounds, and then 30 roof, 2 warehouse, and 118 plumbing. So those are the 542 new work orders that are still open. And then for the existing SSC work orders, there's 1 AV, 48 carpentry, 4 electrical, 18 equipment, 21 grounds, 141 kitchen equipment, 4 mason items, 2 painting issues, 5 plumbing, 31 roof, 1 project. I'm not sure what that is, 1 project, and then 1 warehouse item, making up those remaining 277. So we are looking at these and breaking them down and getting them addressed. And these new positions that we're currently getting resumes in for and making offers will help us expedite that a good bit as well.
Okay,
Any other questions?
Hi, Richard, this is Daniel.
Hey, Daniel.
Do we, are there SLAs for the various types of work orders?
I'm sorry, are there what for the various types?
Are there,
service level agreements?
yeah, service level agreements, like some kind of timelines for each type of work order to be?
Yes, we do use, we have our in-house staff, in-house maintenance staff, but we do have agreements with various vendors, painters, electricians, HVAC shops. So if it's something that we can't get to, then we can bring them in. One of the, I'll give for example, one of the items that was just approved at the last board meeting, actually there were 3. One was in some HVAC contractors that were reapproved, and I'm trying to remember if I have the right one or if this is coming up. But yeah, so to answer your question, we do have a number of vendors that we use that we do annual contracts with. Everything, like I said, HVAC, electrical, door and hardware. We have a locksmith, but we have only a few. So if it's something that we need, or if we need to buy a door, we have those vendors on contract also.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Okay, any other questions? All right, you know what, Richard, I would love to see the information that you stated written down so that we can actually look at it.
Okay. Now or in the future, you mean?
In the future.
Okay, yeah.
Because I was trying to write down the numbers as you were saying it, but you
I'm
started
sorry.
going too fast.
I can send it to you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
I actually had a question for Richard.
Yes,
It's
ma'am.
Sabrina.
Hey.
Hi. Are we looking at the cost comparison of how much we're paying the vendors for these same services that we are able to perform in-house?
I mean, typically, if we're able to perform the services, we do. If we, a lot of the services, if it's something that's a little more out of our wheelhouse, it's hard to say if there's a comparison, or if we're able to make a comparison there. If it's something we're not able to do, just because if our guys are already booked, like painting, for instance. We don't have as many painters as we need, and that's actually one of the groups of employees that we're trying to hire. So if our painters are already booked and we still need more painting, I don't know that we're actually looking at doing a comparison on something like that.
Okay, it might be something interesting to look at. I know you have vacancies, but I was just curious, since it was phrased that we'll use the outside vendors if we can't get to, a certain job. So I didn't know if we would go towards the outside vendors for a matter of convenience or to meet completion within a certain time period, like Daniel was referencing.
Right.
Yeah, that's all.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Okay, thanks, Sabrina. That was a great question. Any other questions? All right, moving right along. Notifications of upcoming community meetings and other events.
There are actually no, right now, we don't have any public meetings other than the board meetings. Of course, one this Friday, then March 14th, I believe, is the next board meeting. Those are the only ones that we have right now that are lined up.
Okay. Okay, no ribbon cutting, no.
No, we have not, we don't have them scheduled, but we still have 3 schools that we need to do ribbon cuttings for, 3 elementary schools. Indian, and I think these are in reverse order, Indian Creek, Smoke Rise, I believe Pleasantdale. Pleasantdale is the next one that we're going to be planning. And those are all our prototype elementary schools. So once we get those planned out, we'll make sure the committee's aware of when those are going to be.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Any questions from the committee? All right, moving right along to 8C, the CMP plan and projects for E-SPLOST 6.
All right. Thank you very much. I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. There we go. I've got 2 things to share. One is an update on the CMP and CMP Comprehensive Master Plan implementation. And then the second I'll share is with the Comprehensive Master Plan, in order to, as I've been saying, align our capital improvement program with the CMP recommendations. Yes, there'll be a E-SPLOST 6 project list, but there's also changes to E-SPLOST 5. And so I'm going to go through a little bit of that. And you'll see a lot, all of these presentations are actually already, I believe, up on the Assembly, up on the board webpage for this Friday's meeting, as when they'll be formally presented to the board. So first, comprehensive master plan. So the CMP itself is done at this point. We have a comprehensive master plan. That final document is being presented to the board on Friday. It's going to be available actually on the CMP webpage. If not tonight, then tomorrow morning. And you will, it exists. And so the recommendations, which are very much the same recommendations that we've been talking about since at least December. So they shouldn't be anything new to those of you who've been following the CMP process. But the next step from the district side is, how do we implement these recommendations? What do we move forward with? how do we move forward with them, and what are the next steps? So I'm going to go through this implementation, just a few of the slides. I won't go through everything, but a few of the big things. So the first steps with implementation is what you will and won't see coming out of this Friday's meeting. So this Friday's meeting, and keep in mind, typically you'd be seeing this right after a presentation from Perkins and Will on what are these recommendations. But some of them, again, if you've been following along with the CMP, these will be familiar. K-8 schools, K-8 models, new magnet programs at McNair and Towers High Schools, elementary school consolidations, combining 2 schools into 1, and consolidating clusters and redistricting. These are all things that you won't be seeing any board action or any request for board action at Friday's meeting. In fact, all of these are going to require further public engagement. And so on all of these, K8, anything to do with K8s, new magnet programs at Towers and McNair, elementary school consolidations, with the exception of Care Reynolds in Dresden, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. But any other recommended school consolidations, all of these are going to be talked about in the future. Specifically at next fall, there'll be major public engagement on several of these, especially the magnet programs, consolidating clusters, redistricting in areas where there is consolidation, and implementing K-8 models. There'll be large public engagement around that next fall, but not any action right now. What you will see is a few very specific recommendations, and then setting the groundwork for several of the construction projects recommended for the CMP. So what you will see is a request by the board to approve an expansion of the Wadsworth Magnet School from a 4-6 grade configuration to 4-8. We're actually, the relocation of Care Reynolds to former Nancy Creek, we're actually pushing to March. So you will see that actually at the March board meeting, rather than Friday. There'll be a resolution to phase out and modernize district facilities. This is in line with, for example, if we're going to rebuild Sequoia Middle as a middle and high, we need to phase out the current Sequoia Middle School facility with the state, let them know that we're doing that so that they can factor that into future reimbursed capital outlay reimbursement applications. So there's an agenda item to do that. This also helps because the district right now is a little bit behind in getting our local facility plan approved. We've been waiting on these CMP recommendations. And so now that we have them, the board approving a resolution for that phase out and modernization, which talk about the modernization in a second, will help finalize and move along completing the district's local facility plan, getting that approved, and that will help with next time we want to apply for state capital outlay reimbursements. What you'll also see is the financial closeout of E-SPLOST 2 and 3, closeout of E-SPLOST 4, and moving any remaining active projects, which is really only one, to E-SPLOST 5, and a major program adjustment of E-SPLOST 5. So really what those 3 are building towards is aligning our E-SPLOST program with the CMP recommendations. So there's the E-SPLOST 6 project list, which will be presented at Friday's meeting, but there's no request for them to approve it. There's further discussion needed on that. But also there's several projects in E-SPLOST 5 where we can either expand the scope of existing project, especially, for example, several schools that are getting sprinkler installations. We can expand that to include HVAC because we're already up in the ceiling, and we can, while we're there, we can work on the HVAC. And we can also add new projects, or really it's taking existing projects at schools and rather than, for example, what the work that we were going to do at Cross Keys High School, that project then becomes the modernization or essentially the new Cross Keys High School. And you'll talk about that here in just a second. So those 3, the closeout of 2 and 3, the financial closeout of 2 and 3, closeout of SPLOST 4, moving a project to 5, and the major program adjustment of 5 kind of all go together. It's housekeeping for previous E-SPLOST finances. It's consolidating the number of active E-SPLOST programs that we have from the current 4 and 5 and soon to be 6 to just 5 and 6. And then a major program adjustment of 5.
Hans, I'm sorry.
Yes.
We still have to do the E-SPLOST audit. So can you give us a really quick
Oh, that's it.
synopsis of
That's it.
everything that you're going to talk about?
No, that's it for this. And so, yes, I'm going to give you a really quick synopsis of what that major program adjustment means, which just for context, I'm sure everybody here on the advisory committee is aware of, E-SPLOST programs have had major adjustments quite frequently. What we found historically is that tends to happen in the middle of a program and at the end of tax collections of a SPLOST program to help kind of realign with the existing project list with our updated expectations. And so that's essentially what the major program adjustment for E-SPLOST 5. Anybody who's interested in these, as I said, these presentations are available up on the board website for Friday's meeting. So I'm going to skip ahead to this, which is really the main quick look at what is the E-SPLOST 5 major program adjustment trying to achieve? What kinds of things do you expect to see? So number one is to reflect the recommendations of the CMP. Number two is to better address facility needs at several schools already receiving facility condition improvements. Essentially, that means expanding the scope and therefore budget of several existing projects so that we can, as I gave the example before, do HVAC while we're already up on the ceiling doing sprinklers, that sort of thing. Close out completed projects, and there's several projects that are already complete, closing them out, and move a project forward from E-SPLOST 4 into 5. Account for additional revenues from E-SPLOST sales tax collections and transfers from previous E-SPLOST programs. Financially closing out 2 and 3, taking all remaining funds, moving them forward to 5, and closing out 5. We'll bring forward, I forget the exact amount, but it was a little over $60 million. And in addition, by the end of sales tax collections, when we get our last E-SPLOST 5 sales tax check at the end of July, we anticipate the sales tax revenues to be around $615 million. That's quite a bit more than the entire current E-SPLOST 5 budget of 561. So a big reason for this major program adjustment is to bring all those additional revenues into the budget and spread them out into projects.
Hey, Hans,
Yes.
can I interrupt just a minute? I'm sorry, but your screen is frozen for several of us.
Okay.
If it looked like the CMP implementation today, the board will not be asked to vote on. That slide was trying to go away and it is frozen midway.
Let me try. Let's see. Does it look better now?
Much better, yes.
Much better.
Thank you. Sorry, this is a really important. This is the last slide I'm going to show you, so this one's really important. So just to say that last one again, because it's probably one of the most important, is a big reason for this major program adjustment. This is number 4, is to account for additional revenues from E-SPLOST sales tax and the transfers from previous E-SPLOST programs. We have more money than what we originally budgeted for, so we'd like to spread that out, put that into programs, and really put those into facilities and improve facility conditions. And then finally, this is a much more technical point, but it is part of kind of, in my mind, I think of it as house cleaning for E-SPLOST, which is the current budget of $561 million. When that budget was developed, intentionally did not include any of the E-SPLOST GEO bond revenues. When the voters approved the E-SPLOST 5 referendum, they also approved a GEO bond at the same time to accelerate the program. And while it was an intentional choice at the time to not include in the budget those revenues, to keep it at 561. It was about 143 million, I believe, of bond revenues, but then that would then go back out as bond expenses. But what we found is that when we are accounting for this in Munis, in our accounting programs, we fully account for the entire bond debt service, including the principal, which is good in our accounting program, but then we're counting expenses against a budget that never included the revenues. So to fully account for bond revenues, to balance expenses, the budget of E-SPLOST 5 would need to go up by $143 million. It would not change the total available funds in any way. It just simply more correctly reflects both the bond revenue in and the bond expenses out. That's the last thing that we'll be doing with this major program adjustment. As I said, I'm going to end this one here. As I've said, there's more details to this presentation. I think this is a 26-slide presentation. I've only shown you the first few. So please tune in on Friday to get a lot more details and information. And I'm happy to come back here to the E-SPLOST Advisory Committee if there's any questions or more details needed into what these changes are, why, and what that will look like.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hans. We're actually going to, this was supposed to be a very brief presentation. He will come to our March meeting and give a more comprehensive presentation. So are there any questions for Hans with what he presented? All right, hearing none. Thank you so much, Hans.
Thank you very much.
We will move on to unfinished business, and that is the E-SPLOST audits for 2019-2020.
All right, tonight we have with us Derek Foster and Christopher McKellar from Malden and Jenkins CPA. Before they get started, I did want to show, let's see if I can share my screen. Can everyone see the district website there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so if you would like to review the SPLOST audits yourself, if you go to the community tab and go to E-SPLOST and go to status reports and audits, and our audits and the two that they will be going over tonight are the 2019 and the 2020 audits. And you can see here we have audit reports back to 2008. So Mr. Foster, if you want to get started, I am going to stop sharing in case you needed to, and please proceed.
All right, thank you so much for that. Again, I'm Derek Foster. I'm a manager at Malden Jenkins, and I was the manager on this engagement. So I'll be presenting the results of the 2019 and 2020 SPLOST audit. So let me share my screen. Can everyone see this PDF?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
Yes.
For the sake of brevity, these reports for 2019 and 2020, there were no findings that we had in either one. And so for brevity's sake, I'm going to just highlight that one of the biggest differences was that last year we had $131 million in disbursements we were testing, and this year it's $115 million. I should say FY19 was 131 and FY20 was 115. So that was the biggest difference. And so I'll just go through the 2020, but now, like Richard was saying, you can compare these two reports in case you would like to see the specifics, but those would be the biggest differences. But I'll just go through the 2020 and just know that the results are very similar. So down here, the reason that we do these performance audits is if a school system generates $5 million or more in sales tax for the SPLOST, then it's required to have a performance audit. So that's why we perform these. Down here, there's a summary in case I won't read over everything, but just so everyone knows, this is a summary of the resolutions and what these SPLOST programs are for and the allowable expenditures. To describe our audit scope and our objectives, we had 9 objectives specifically. So you'll see these objectives come out down below, and as I talk about the procedures that we had for each one of these. So I'll just name these objective 1 through 9. I'll read them real quick, just so you have a high level understanding of what we were doing. So number 1 was to determine whether the schedule of projects adhered to the approved resolution adopted by the district. Objective number 2 is to determine that the reporting effectiveness between the district and the board communicates the status of the capital outlay projects to ensure the legislative, regulatory, and organizational goals and objectives, and they were achieved. Number 3 is to determine the reliability of the monitoring function to verify that the actual project expenditures weren't exceeding the budgeted amounts. Number 4 is to determine whether there's an effective means of monitoring the program performance within a projected timeline and to evaluate the validity of those expenditures and the timeliness and completion of each capital project. This one is to determine the reliability, validity, or relevance of financial analyses to verify cash flows conform to forecasted projections by the project and priority, and that the intended economic results were accomplished. Excuse me. Then the next we have is to determine whether effective procedures exist to verify to verify that design and construction of capital projects adhere to the capital quality control standards. Number 7 is to determine the effectiveness of financial controls in place to ensure the receipt and disbursement of tax revenue funds and that they're in compliance with the applicable laws and regulations. Number 8 is to determine whether management of the school district is following the board approved procurement policies. And then finally, to determine that the SPLOST proceeds received by the district were invested in accordance with the board's approved policies. So that's I'll spend the most time just summarizing those again at a high level. We'll go a little quicker down through these. So for our audit methodology, we had a planning phase where we developed expectations for the timeliness and how long it will take for these different procedures to be done. We had an analytical phase where we reviewed the prior year results and developed expectations for the current year and what we would expect. We used a risk-based approach, and we looked at these objectives and determined the riskiness of noncompliance for each of those objectives that I described above. We gained an understanding of the internal controls surrounding those different objectives. And then we prepared a tailored audit program, and that drove the testing that you'll see below. And then finally here, reporting, this is what you're seeing right now is the end result, is that we have this report as a result of our testing. So I won't summarize again each objective, but I'll just note here that when you're seeing these, you'll see objective 1, the procedures and the results for anyone who wants to look at this later on. So for objective number 1, we did a disbursement test and we determined that the expenditures that we tested were allowable. For objective number 2, excuse me, we reviewed reports that were submitted to the board. We reviewed change orders, and we determined that the school district had an effective method in place to communicate with the board in regard to the financial and construction status of each project. For objective number 3, we also looked at monthly status reports showing the monthly revenue and expenditure activity. We also we reviewed the actual to budgets, and we determined that the actual project expenditures did not exceed the budgeted amounts. For number 4, we reviewed reports that were prepared for submission to the board. We reviewed reports for the inspection of those project sites, and we determined that the board has an effective program in place to monitor that program performance and to ensure timely completion of each capital project within the timeline. With number 5, we reviewed E-SPLOST receipts logs. We reviewed the year-to-date project report, and we reviewed reports submitted to the board, determining that there's an adequate process in place to monitor cash flows. And we saw that those cash flows were observed and they were signed off and approved, and they were being monitored. For number 6, we determined based on our testing here that after discussing with various operational divisions and looking at the policies and reviewing the project manuals, and in addition doing our disbursement tests, we determined there are effective procedures in place to verify the design and construction of capital projects adhered to the applicable quality controls. For number 7, we looked at the monthly financial reports submitted to the board. We looked at the disbursements, making sure that everything was approved. And we determined that there were effective financial controls in place to ensure that the receipts and disbursements of tax revenue funds were in compliance with applicable laws. For number 8, we tested several different procurements of different vendors. And during our disbursement test, if we had disbursements of $100,000 or more, we tested the procurement process surrounding that with the applicable thresholds for those. We also tested 2 new procurement contracts placed out for bid during that fiscal year. And we determined that the school district is following the board approved procurement policies and procedures. And lastly, we obtained the district guidelines governing the investment of surplus cash. And after looking at those and looking at 12 months of E-SPLOST funds investment statements, we ensured that the investments were invested in accordance with the board approved guidelines and policies. And those are the results of our report. Again, there were no findings, which is what you want. So I'm going to open up this time for questions. If anyone has a question or comment, I'd be happy to address those.
Good evening, Derek. This is Sabrina McTeer. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well. Had a question.
Yes.
The fiscal year 18 to 19 scope is missing the total dollar amount that you tested. The difference is shown in your audit of July 19 to June 2020. So I wanted to know what was even though you tested 60 transactions, what was the total dollar amount for those?
So I don't have that information handy. I do see what you're saying as I'm looking at I do see what you're saying as you're looking at the 19 report. I could find out that information for you and I could send that to you.
Perfect. Thanks so much.
Yes, and I just like to highlight, we do have that information handy. It just was not included. It looks like it's not included in the 19 report, but we did include it in the 20.
Okay. I'm curious to see if the dollar amount was commensurate to the total, since that one was almost 132 million in spending, and the 20 was what, 115, almost 116 million. So even though you tested the same number or the same volume of transactions, I am curious at the total dollar value of those transactions.
I can find that out for you. I will say that we rely on statistical sampling. So based on those procedures with the sampling methods that we used, statistically speaking, if there was an exception that popped up and we project that onto the population, we would expect, using those statistical methods, that we would still capture any material non-compliance with that through these 60 disbursements. But I'll get that information for you. Are there any other questions? Okay, I appreciate your time. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
All right, thank you so much, Derek. And great question as usual, Sabrina. Moving right along to number 10 on our agenda, collect recommendations from meeting and follow-up matters for next meeting. The only thing that I can see was the 2 questions that Sabrina asked that need to be followed up on, and the information provided, as well as asking for the facilities work order documentation in a report form. And unless anybody noted anything else, I think those are the 3 things that I remember.
I think there were 2 emails also that Daniel was going to send to me.
Yes, I'll send those to you after the meeting. And Madam Chair, don't forget you wanted to have Hans to come back to the March meeting.
Yeah, I noted that in my notes. Thank you, Daniel.
You're welcome.
All right, so moving right along into announcements. Any announcements for our committee?
None on this end.
Okay, so hearing none. I did see that our superintendent did come on into our meeting, and I wanted to give her an opportunity to speak to our committee as well. So Mrs. Watson Harris.
She might be doing double
duty
on meetings, so she might not might actually be on another call as well.
Okay. I did also note that we have a couple of our board members on the call as well. Did they want to come off mute and say any words?
This is Mrs. Turner, Vicki Turner. I'm the chair of the DeKalb Board of Education. And I just want to thank you for allowing me to sit in tonight. I don't always get to do it. We're touring and going in several directions, but I was able to tune in. It was a very informative meeting. And also, I thought it was very positive in reinforcing public trust. And so I want to thank you to the E-SPLOST Oversight Committee for the work that you're doing and the ways in which you're helping us to be more efficient over taxpayer dollars. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Turner. I appreciate that, those encouraging words. I did see Miss Deirdre Pierce, Mrs. Deirdre Pierce. Mrs. Pierce, did you want to come off a mute and say anything?
She's in the attendees group, and I
Oh,
don't.
that's right. She can't say anything.
Yeah, and I noticed Mr. DaCosta is also with us in the attendees group. And I was scrolling through to see if I saw anyone else. I think that was it.
I believe so. I think I
Yeah.
I remember seeing those two.
Can we get them promoted to panelists briefly so they can speak?
Ooh.
Can you all hear me, Mr. Boyd?
Yes. There you go. Yes.
There it is. There it is. Thank you all so much for the wonderful work that you all have committed yourself to doing. This was a lot of valuable information to our stakeholders and to the audit committee. I'm sorry, the auditor that was working on that. I would like to see a copy of that if you don't mind, but I really appreciate you all. So thank you all so much.
No
Hi,
problem. Thank you. Thank you for attending.
and this is Deirdre Pierce. I just wanted to say thank you as well. It took me a minute to kind of figure out how to unmute and whatnot as I was not in the right spot. But thank you for the great information. And I look forward to hearing the answer to the question that the young lady asked about the disbursements for the 2019-20 audits. Not having a dollar amount, that'll be interesting to know as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Pierce. And just as a side point, Mrs. Pierce was a former member of the E-SPLOST Advisory Committee.
Yes, ma'am.
Do miss you, Deirdre.
Well, listen, I stay busy. No grass growing under these feet.
I know they're not. And I'm sure you're doing a fabulous job.
Well, thank you. And you all are as well. Thank you so much for continuing to pick up the mantle and walk with it.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
All right. Looks like we're going to get out early today, folks. If there's nothing else, no other additional announcements. Our next meeting will be March 23rd, 2022 at 6 p.m. If anybody on the advisory committee will be absent, please send myself, Daniel, or Richard and Monica an email to let us know that you will be absent or if you will be late so that we can anticipate your arrival if we do not have a quorum. I also wanted to step back for one quick second and say that we have begun the interviews for the 3 open positions this week. And we should conclude I think the last interview is on Friday. So hopefully starting next month, we will have a full committee. Any questions in regards to that? All right, hearing none, it is now 7:07 and our meeting is now adjourned. Thank you so much, everyone. Please.